Hey guys, Mr. Ridgway here for our next lesson as a part of Unit 3. So we've got Crazy Cajuns in the Wacky War of 1812. If you couldn't tell, we're going to be dealing with Louisiana and the Louisiana Purchase, and then, of course, the War of 1812. Here's our objectives for this particular lesson. We're going to be trying to explain the significance of the Louisiana Purchase. Why did it matter? Why should we care? The major causes and consequences of the War of 1812, and then some honor and slavery work time, honor and slavery project work time if we have that. So there's a story map right here that you need to check out with the Louisiana Purchase. There's also 3 videos that you can access with those buttons. And then once you've done both of those things, again, the videos are there for you to look at. There is a reflection that I'd like you to do, and you just click the blue link to do it. Okay, cool. So once you've done that, we can move on to our mini lesson, which is all about the War of 1812. Again, what are we trying to do here? If you can walk out of this knowing the causes and then the consequences of the War of 1812, you're going to be fine. Okay, so again, cause and effect. What causes wars to begin and how do those wars affect society and people are going to be our particular focus. Okay, so the Louisiana Purchase has indeed happened, and hopefully you put down that despite it being a somewhat legally questionable purchase, according to the Constitution, Jefferson has to kind of hold his nose while he does it. The big picture is that the United States has doubled, roughly, okay, in terms of land mass. Now, again, just remember that the purchase of this land, quote unquote, from the French, is of course done at the expense of Native Americans, and will continue that trend for a long time to come. Okay, let's talk about some of these Amerindian groups that are out here in this area of the Louisiana Purchase, because this is going to have a role to play in what we call the War of 1812. Groups like the Kickapoo, the Potawatomi, Winnebago, Ottawa, the Chippewa, the Miami, for example, in Indiana. They are, not the Miami in this case, but anyways, those groups, they are starting to get organized. And what we're starting to have happen before the War of 1812 is there's a new group, a new confederacy, if you will, of Native Americans that are getting organized under a kind of a head group called the Shawnee. We'll talk about them here in a second. Also, what's going on in the background of all this? Louisiana Purchase has happened. Amerindian groups are starting to get organized. Is that Napoleon is just going crazy in Europe and just kind of smashing face. So the Napoleonic Wars in Europe are happening. Now, cause-wise, what's going to actually cause the war to occur? The first thing is going to be the actual Louisiana Purchase itself. Okay, and the reason why is because the westward expansion of the U.S. is going to bring it into conflict with the Native Americans that are there. Okay, so you can see there that proclamation line of 1763, that old one. Once that is broken, okay, and once again, American settlers start moving in, by the time that territory gets doubled, that's going to cause an issue. Now, what's going on? Well, the backdrop to the Louisiana Purchase happening is that the British are starting to trade, and are continuing to trade with this new Native American Western Confederacy. And again, the British had agreed in Jay's Treaty and a couple other treaties that they were going to leave this area, and they weren't going to be a part of kind of like where the United States eventually would be. Why is this a problem? Well, the U.S. believes that they are supplying some of these Confederacy groups with weapons. They're helping them get organized, and so that kind of fight over the influence of territory is going to be the first cause of Louisiana Purchase. Okay, so again, what's the big idea here? The Americans are upset that somehow that the British are supplying and helping this Western Confederacy get organized, which brings us then to the Western Confederacy. So what is this thing? Well, it's under the direction of Tenskwatawa, who also goes by the name of the Prophet, and his brother Tecumseh. And what they do is they start organizing multiple groups up and down the whole of the United States there into this Western Confederacy. It is probably one of the, again, very rare moments that we have, besides the Iroquois, that we have like this kind of like pan-Amerindian movement. Now, where were they kind of centered? If you need help locating it in your brain, actually right near where Purdue is in Indiana. So they're at, it's not there anymore. You can go visit some of the museums and artifacts, I guess, archaeology that's there. If you go to Lafayette, Indiana, it's right there. Now, what is their Western Confederacy all about? The big theme of it is returning to native ways and rejecting American and European influences. So, for example, like getting rid of alcohol that had come and become a very pervasive part of Native American communities, and clothing, dress, mannerisms, these kind of things. Now, again, just to bring this full picture here, the U.S. is upset because this Western Confederacy, led by Tecumseh and Tenskwatawa, is being supplied by the British in this Ohio River Valley. Now, just to help you understand from the British perspective, like what's happening here is they're using this as a check on U.S. expansion. It's kind of a way of holding them back, and of course, this is going to make Americans very angry. So this brings us then to Napoleon. With Napoleon on a full rampage in Europe, Britain, the main thing with that was happening is that Britain was at war with France. And France and Britain, both at this time, start confiscating and basically impressing American sailors. And so, again, impressing, which you may not remember from a couple lessons ago, is when you would kidnap sailors and then force them to be a part of your military or your navy. It accumulates to, at this time, about 8,000 Americans. So it's a lot of people, which, again, that as you can imagine, makes the Americans then too happy. So what happens because of this? Well, in 1807, Jefferson, who is president in his second term at this point, the end of his second term, makes a decision, and that is he puts in place the Embargo Act of 1807. You will want to know that. An embargo is a ban on trade. And so this embargo completely stops the U.S. from trading with France and Britain. Now, I want you to guess what this is going to do to the British and the Americans, because it's pretty devastating, but not in the way you think. It's going to tank the American economy, because the United States is still super, super dependent on exports to Europe. It hurts merchants, but also farmers. Everybody's affected by this. This embargo goes through the Madison administration. It's there for a good long time, and the British just remain relatively unaffected. It doesn't really mess with them at all. Now, here's where things get weird. So, because of the impressing of sailors, the Western Confederacy, and then also the British supplying that Western Confederacy, Congress is going to declare war in 1812. So western and rural areas, okay, you'll notice are kind of blue on this map, and what you're seeing is this is the voting in votes by Congress as to who supported the war and who did not. Notice the yellow nays. Those are all Federalists who are voting no. And the reason why, because again, Federalists were supporters of Britain, is they have no interest in this. It's not helpful for them. But for the majority of locations, it's something that they feel like is worth it. So some notable events here. We'll watch two of these notable events from the War of 1812. That is We'll do that. We'll do that in class. But let's talk about the consequences. So the treaty that ends the war, again, signed before the actual battle at New Orleans, because timing sucks and it's hard to get messages across the Atlantic, is called the Treaty of Ghent. And nothing happens in the Treaty of Ghent. It's just saying, that it's an end of the war. The big loser here is the Western Confederacy. The Amerindians are going to lose out. This also, one of the last big consequences of the War of 1812, it's going to kill the Federalist Party. And the reason why is because they resisted, not only had they resisted participating in the War of 1812, but they had assembled at something at the end of the war called the Hartford Convention. And the Hartford Convention was basically this meeting between elites of the Federalist Party. And they basically come together and they protest a bunch of U.S. policies that are kind of across the board. Now, if you read some of them, they seem very reasonable. For example, like getting rid of the 3/5 clause. Okay, the idea that like slaves are only 3/5 of a person, saying the embargo is a bad idea and that it's hurting the economy. That instead of it just taking a majority of Congress, it should take 2/3 of Congress to declare war. The problem is that when Andrew Jackson's victory, the news of it, gets back from New Orleans, the meeting and the publication that they have coming out of this makes the Federalist Party look really unpatriotic. It's like the worst possible timing ever, and it makes them look out of touch. It makes them look, like they're not a part of, the part of the spirit of the times. Like Andrew Jackson just won and the U.S. had really stuck it to the British. And so this just kills the Federalist Party. They are really going to completely dissipate after the War of 1812. So complete the exit ticket, and that's the end of this lesson. And then I will see you guys for our next one.